Hello and welcome back to Spinal Cast. I'm your host, David Stevens, and joining us today is Jack Jablonski. Along with being something of a celebrity here in Minnesota, Jack currently resides as a digital media content specialist for the LA Kings out in California. Jack, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, David. I'm excited to talk.
Awesome. Well, so you and I are pretty close in age. How old are you?
I just turned 28.
Okay, 28. I just turned 30, so I guess I'm 2 years older than you. But I vividly remember when your injury took place. I was also in high school at the time. And there was a lot of news surrounding it. And for those of our viewers and listeners who might not know kind of the story and what all went down, would you be willing to kind of give us a rundown on your injury and how it happened?
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in Minneapolis, in Uptown area. When I was 16, I was attending Benilde St. Margaret's High School and was playing high school hockey for them. Had a promising future in the sport. Had been at the top of my class all through and through growing up, and then unfortunately on December 30th, 2011, when I was a sophomore at 16 years old, I was checked illegally from behind into the boards, went uncontrollably headfirst into the boards and broke my C5, C6 vertebrae in my neck, and then resulted in paralysis, quadriplegia specifically. So I'm paralyzed from the chest down. I reside my life, or at least currently, in a motorized wheelchair. So that's the gist of it. There's obviously a lot more nitty gritty details and the impact that it's had that we'll dive into and stuff. But that's unfortunately where I was left and changed my life forever. But obviously on the track to hoping to help myself and others regain a lot of functions that were lost on that day.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I think for our viewers, I think a lot of people, when they hear quadriplegia, they think, nothing from the chin down. They can't, no movement, no feeling. And while there are individuals who are certainly, that situation, I mean, you're moving your arms quite a bit. And, you've regained at least some movement from when we first met. I think it's important that people understand that being a paraplegic versus a quadriplegic is much more the location of your injury and much less the functionality that you have. Is that an accurate description?
Yeah, it's accurate. I think the easiest way to explain someone, the difference would just be, how many limbs are impacted, so to speak, and obviously para 2 and quad 4. So as a paraplegic, normally you have full function in your upper body, and mainly specifically the arms and the hands. And myself as a quadriplegic, I'm still mobile in the upper body. I can move my arms, I can move my my chest, my upper body, but my all 4 limbs have been impacted to the point of not being able to, I use the word, quote unquote, normal, in society. Yeah. I can use my hands, I can use my arms, my biceps, but they're not, quote unquote, normal. So,
I don't not the way they were before the injury.
Exactly. So that's the simple definition or difference between quadriplegics and paraplegics. It very much varies. There's high functioning quads. There's low functioning quads. It all depends, but that's the simple difference.
I think that's a good thing to point out. I like the way you kind of highlighted as like number of affected limbs versus complete loss of function in all those limbs. So on that note of you kind of regaining some movement and getting some improvements in your own, cycle of dealing with your injury, you had the opportunity to get a spinal cord stimulator surgically implanted. And I'm interested in what your experience has been with that. You know, our first episode ever on this show was actually with Dr. Ann Parr at the University of Minnesota. And she talked a lot about the spinal cord stimulators and, you know, the progress that's being made there. And so I guess what has been your experience with it? And were you part of a trial, or is this a treatment? Kind of how does it work?
Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. So the first thing is I was fortunate to be a part of a trial study using the SCONE device, and the SCONE device, it's actually just on the base of the skin, so nothing surgical.
Oh,
But
nice.
what it has done is, this SCONE device, which is it started at UCLA, and it's, since gone on in its own business. And that's something I was fortunate enough to be a part of. My foundation has been raising money for the trial studies that have been going on. But to kind of break it down, I was a part of the first trial study, one of 24 patients to be a part of it. And for me, and I think a lot of people, when you look at someone who's paralyzed,
Mm-hmm.
you go, "Oh, they can't walk." And yeah, of course, that's number one. That's obviously the eye test of what you notice first. But in my experience personally, and people that I know that live with paralysis, especially if you're a quadriplegic, if you're asked, what do you want back? The first thing you're going to answer isn't to be able to walk. It's to have more independence,
Yeah,
to have hand function, to be able to do things on your own, because that's what you lose ultimately, at the cusp of everything is your independence. And, um, we all want that back. So for me,
totally.
being able to be a part of this trial study where I could focus on trying to get, um, my independence back, obviously a higher quality of life. That was the focus, on trying to get more hand function, being able to do more stuff on my own. And
Yeah,
uh, not only for myself, but all 24 patients who are part of the trial study benefited in a positive manner in some way, shape, or form. So for me specifically, I'm able to grab a wine glass and drink myself, or
mm-hmm.
can pick things up, or have a little bit more control in my hands, but also in my core, and my ability to stabilize myself while doing things, not falling over all the time or needing people to pick me back up. Well,
Mm-hmm.
it happens every once in a while when you lose your balance. But for me, the most important thing, um, in being able to benefit from this trial study, of which we're trying to move it towards the FDA, and it's in its second phase right now, which is very promising. And um, when it comes to the independence and the gaining of movement and function in the upper body for people with quadriplegia, I've been fortunate enough to benefit, and that's the focus on right now. So,
Yeah,
very lucky to be a part of it. Super stoked with a lot of the things that I've been improving in, and hoping to continue to do it more as I still have the device.
awesome. So how do you, like, as a patient, how did you get lined up with the trial? Did they reach out to you, or you working part of your foundation? Were you kind of in search of these sorts of things, so you were keen on the potential for an opportunity, or how did you get looped in?
Yeah, it's a great question, David. I think it's a culmination of a lot of different things, but first and foremost, I've never been in the 10, 11 years that I've had my nonprofit foundation raising money for spinal cord injury research. I've never been a part of a trial study or benefited in any way, specifically putting myself ahead of anyone.
Right.
That's never been my goal. My goal is to, find the research, raise the money, help as many people as possible. When it came to the SCONE device and this electric stimulation, I qualified like anyone. It was taking place in Southern California, through a company that we had worked with previously with our foundation, and have built a relationship with, in Dr. Reggie Edgerton and Parag God, both people, who are very integral pieces in the spinal cord injury research across the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Um, So those two people took on this project, believed in it. They are very active within the spinal stimulation world, both surgically and transcutaneous, aka on the skin,
Hmm.
so non-invasive. And so for me, I qualified as a patient who was, available to be a part of the study, put in the commitment, and was fortunate enough to be accepted as one of the first 24 people. So it was. It's nerve wracking because there's so many things that come to your mind on the what ifs,
Right.
but also you want to progress, and
Yeah.
mentally, I think you go into a trial study hoping to improve, but then you also have in the back of your mind, what if it doesn't work? And
Right.
so
Or what if it makes it worse?
exactly. And you like to think that nothing can get worse, but unfortunately with spinal cord injuries, we're susceptible to a lot of medical issues and things that can arise from just the simplest things that can really set us back. So nerve wracking for sure. But once I got involved and started to see some progress, that really helped from a mental standpoint and obviously a physical standpoint as well.
Yeah, totally. Well, have you happened to watch the new documentary? It's David Holmes, The Boy Who Lived. It's the story about basically Daniel Radcliffe when he was filming the Harry Potter movies. He had a young stunt double who played Harry in a lot of scenes and or would practice things before they made Daniel Radcliffe do it. Anyways, he got paralyzed in the filming of the seventh movie, and they made a documentary about him. And he talks a lot about, it doesn't seem like it could get worse, but he has a very unique circumstance in which he actually developed a cyst on his spinal cord, and it's actually progressively made his paralysis worse as time has gone on. And so I think that's the other thing people probably don't have a full understanding of, is just the fact that usually the one injury is never the end of it. There's going to be other stuff going on,
Yeah.
We interviewed a former Detroit Lion, and he's still, dealing with issues, 20 years after his injury. So I think you bring up a good point there. So looking at other research around the SCI community, is there anything else that you kind of have your eye on, or that your foundation is super stoked on kind of promoting and it's, bringing to the forefront?
Yeah, no, that's another good question. From a foundation perspective, we have a commitment with SCONE and this stimulation device moving forward over the next few years. So that's a huge focus of ours right now.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to a financial and promotional and a belief system that we have within our group. So that's the focus. At the same time, I think there's a ton of things that are going on in the spinal cord injury research world, both in the States and internationally,
Totally.
across the world. There's some fascinating things going on in Switzerland that I'm very intrigued by, that I would love to dive into more with our medical team.
Yeah, we interviewed those two doctors on
Yeah,
this show as well. Yeah, Cortine and
yeah,
Block.
yeah, exactly. Cortine is, someone who I think is always pushing the needle in a very positive manner, safely, but also in a very impressive way. I'm fascinated by his work and want to learn more about it from a foundation perspective. If it's something we can support, I don't know the answer yet because of the whole international things and where our bylaws lie. But at the same time, it's mainly about continuing to raise awareness
Yeah,
for myself and the foundation, and by myself I mean from a personal standpoint, raising it, not all eyes on me.
absolutely.
More, yeah, more of a wanting to push the awareness from my platforms, but our foundation platforms, because there's so much progress being made. I was injured in 2011, and I think you look at the last 10, 11 years and where it started when myself and my family and the people around me were looking at what to do in 2011, 2012, 13
Mm-hmm.
versus where we're at now. I think there's so much progress, and it continues to just go on that exponential curve of what we're learning, what we're finding out. And a big question in the spinal cord injury world is as you know, is why? Why is this working?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we're at the stage where we don't know why for everything.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we're hoping to learn a little bit more about.
Right. And once you can kind of figure out that why, it helps you develop a greater impact, right? That
Exactly.
why is kind of that opening key to like, now we can really start making
Dive
some
into
huge
it.
progress.
100%.
Huge progress. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
It's,
and
yeah.
you talk about not being, all eyes on me, and your selflessness is very apparent. Even talking about, being part of a trial, I think as a viewer, personally, maybe it's a selfish mentality of my own, but I think as a viewer or a listener of this show, I think a lot of people would completely understand if it's like, I'm just in search of anything to make my life better once I've dealt with this. And it's been amazing to me watching, you're meeting all these people who have experienced these injuries. You, Peter Morton, and MCPF, and all sorts of different people, but it's so quickly not about them. And it's so much more about this general idea and the community as a whole, where it's like our push is for those future people who deal with this injury. I realize that I'm not the center of attention, and like I'm putting all of my effort and all of my insights into trying to find a cure for those next people who get injured. And then, by the way, if there's something at the end that can help me, I'll take it.
Yeah.
And I think I really applaud that mentality, but at the same time, from us on the outside, I think we all appreciate the fact that you guys get help too. So when there are opportunities, I like the fact that you're participating in a trial, because you should be. I think you are more than rightful to that opportunity to try and improve your own life. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't know where I was going with that, but I just wanted to, I appreciate the selflessness, but at the same time, I think you deserve to be selfish sometimes.
Yeah, no, I mean, I appreciate the kind words. And I go back to my injury, and, for anyone in Minnesota who was aware of what was going on in 2012, mainly, having been injured the day before, New Year's Eve. I was very, very fortunate to have so much support and so much awareness and publicity regarding my situation and how I was doing medically, and the awareness aspect that went global in many ways, shapes, and forms. So I go back to that, and not everyone has that.
Yeah.
And frankly, very, very few people do. And I'm very, very grateful. Do I know why it was, me? No, I have no idea. But I'm so, so lucky, and I'm so grateful for being given the opportunity to have a voice for people who don't necessarily have a voice, that are going through the same thing. And, I know how tough living with a spinal cord injury is. And to know that there's so many people out there that are going through the same thing as myself, or even harder instances or situations, it makes me that much more motivated to try to have an impact and try to leave a lasting image that can help everyone, obviously myself included. Of course, I want to get back on my feet. I believe I will. I believe I'll get out of the chair in due time, but we're not going to do that without having someone step up and try to find the answers to what will do that.
Yeah.
And I hope to be that person, hope to be able to be a part of a crew that can, advance paralysis research to a point where in my lifetime and everyone else who's living with it can benefit in some way, shape, or form. And at the very least, improve their quality of life. So I'm very lucky and very fortunate. I know how grateful my family is, and myself, for everything that we've been able to try to accomplish in the research world,
Yeah.
and the support system. So, it's people like you guys who have reached out, and everyone that has been supportive and wants to help us, tell that story and find ways to improve people's lives that are living with the injuries like myself.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, I kind of want to change gears here with my next question.
Yeah.
And it's more personal, to you. So I guess it's been a while since you came out. But was it earlier this year?
It was September of 22. So
Okay.
just over a
So
year.
just over a year. Well, congratulations on making that step for yourself. I think that's huge.
Thank you.
And was that a struggle given did your injury play any role in that coming out now versus earlier, or how did that kind of affect
Yeah. No,
that?
first, thank you for the the compliment. But yeah, it was no, it was a huge struggle. Mentally, emotionally, physically, of course. Just I was injured at 16 years old,
Yeah.
and I think for anyone, whatever their sexuality is, uh, you try to figure out who you are, whether it's mentally, physically, whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm.
For myself, being injured at 16, the following years um, were all about recovery and health and getting the most out of what you've got when it came to my injury.
Right.
And at the same time, mentally, I was also going through trying to figure out who I was. And um, you know, to no fault of anyone's own, growing up, I didn't grow up around anyone who was gay. And so it wasn't like I had any examples or things to relate to.
Right.
And then on top of it, I'm still am very masculine sport-esque jock, so to speak, that it's in your head, it's they're not adding up, because
Right.
on
It's a
one end
societal norm that is just
exactly
not
society
clicking.
exactly. So it was like in your head you're confused, but then on the other end, it's the life you're living isn't supposed to result in that sexual identity.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really tough. It didn't all click until a little later in life, frankly, until COVID hit, because I finally was like out of Minnesota in terms of being in the limelight and in the public eye 24/7,
Yeah.
where I felt I had to conform to who the publicity thought I was. And then you just had time by yourself. I had moved to a new city after graduating from college, um, after being in denial all of college because of just the
Yeah.
wasn't there yet. It didn't click. It clicks for everyone at a different time. Some people know when they're 8, some people don't.
Yep.
I didn't really realize it until I was in my early 20s. And so for me, I went down a dark road because it was overwhelming to first realize that I was gay. And then the second part was to realize how much I had to work on myself to be proud of who I was, but then to also have to face the reality of talking to people and telling people. And because of the way that I was in the media and how people knew me, I felt I had to kind of come forward to tell everyone
Yeah.
to be able to move forward in my life comfortably.
Right.
So that took me down an unfortunately dark path. Thankfully, didn't do anything that harmed myself in any way, shape, or form. Sought therapy and was able to work on it, talk to my friends and family, and finally come out publicly. And it was just a huge relief. When you're in the closet for essentially 10 plus years,
Yeah.
when you date back to when all of it started being confusing, or the questioning of this and that, or what you like or don't like. And for me, it was a rough patch because you overthink everything. And when you're alone,
100%.
when you're alone, you think of every scenario, and it often ends in the worst case scenario. And I just didn't want things to change. I wanted to continue living my life. I wanted to continue to work in professional sports, which is obviously a complicated world, especially when you're gay, and it's a very straightforward world
Yeah.
within, especially the hockey community. And I've been very, very fortunate. The organization that I work for, the LA Kings, has been nothing but supportive. Everyone else that I've interacted with has been nothing supportive. I've never dealt with any adversity after coming out, or any, um, I'm trying to think of the right word, but I've
Yeah.
never,
Like
um,
backlash or
exactly. And
yeah.
that's what I was so concerned about, is people who had supported me, people who had supported my foundation, people who had supported my family, whether it's just, whether it's financially or it's just from a loving and caring standpoint. I didn't want to let anyone down, or I didn't want to, essentially uh, make people look at me in a worse light because of my sexuality. And I was very fortunate, and still am, that I've been very supported from everyone. And frankly, I've matured and grown up enough to know that if someone doesn't want to be a part of my life because of how I identify sexually, I very much don't want to be a part of theirs.
Exactly. And I applaud that because, it's like anything, it's really difficult to publicly state something that you're fighting over internally.
Yeah.
And it's an internal battle. I mean, just to be transparent, I'm currently 6 years sober,
Mhm.
and coming out to people as an alcoholic and communicating my sobriety had always been a struggle. I didn't want to be seen as a lesser than
Yeah,
or something of
100%.
that nature. Or, I had this image, I wanted to maintain that image, and I didn't want this to taint it. And it sounds very similar
Yeah.
to that sort of situation. And, I'm just so happy to hear that the people you surrounded yourself with are supportive of it, because you have to be. I mean, it's just such a it's such a personal thing. It doesn't belong in other people's decisions to like make a choice for you.
Yeah. I mean, there were two things, and it was, you hit the nail on the head of not wanting to be lesser, or showing vulnerability in a public standpoint is tough. And whether that just means, telling someone you're struggling with, something within your friend group or your family, like, it's not easy to buck up. And um, for myself, a huge reason on why I did it, in terms of coming out publicly in the way I did, was knowing how hard it was for myself, and going through what I did from the age of essentially, 15 or whatever, all the way through when I did come out, is knowing how tough that was, and how isolating and lonely I felt. I wanted to try to put it out there to help whoever else is going through it. And,
Totally.
you know, obviously be someone that can be reached out to if someone wants help. But at the same time, just, giving one more person who's going through it one more example on promoting being yourself and being proud of who you are.
Yeah, I mean, even your mention of how it's a decision in which you're very it's a very individual decision, and you're fighting internally about it.
Yeah.
But then on top of that, you're also fighting internally with your own physical situation from the injury.
Yeah.
And so it's like it's stacked on top of it, and I can't imagine the mental state you had to be in. So I'm just so happy that things have turned out so well, and that you're the person that you are, and doing all the amazing things that you are.
Yeah.
So, kind of branching off of that whole wonderful story, what has dating been like since coming out?
Complicated, I guess, right? It's been interesting, to say the least. I mean,
Yeah,
when you're in the closet for 10 plus years, and then you finally come out, you feel like you're a caged animal that just wants to, like, just get out and experience
explore.
life.
Yeah,
Exactly. And that's I guess what this last year has been, in terms of trying, going on dates, and meeting people, and figuring out, what you like in life. And it's been complicated. I think LA is a very fascinating place. I'm lucky to live here. It's obviously very liberal and accepting when it comes to sexuality, which is great.
yeah,
But then at the same time, it's also very, it's very LA. It's all
Yeah.
so looks based, and you feel like you've got to conform to a certain body image and things like that. So, I'm continuing to learn about myself and about the community and stuff like that. But um, I'm single, looking for that person. I think that we all feel like we are looking for. So nothing in that aspect in terms of finding true
The
love or whatever
one.
you want to say.
Yeah.
But
Well,
yeah,
and I
no,
think that's fair.
it's
I think
been,
that's fair. Nobody should find their soulmate in a year. That's kind of a
it'd be
ridiculous thing.
it'd be ideal, but yeah,
Yeah,
it's a lot
it would
to
be
ask
it would
for
be
for sure.
wonderful to not have to spend a bunch of time on it, but unfortunately,
Yeah,
that's just not how relationships work.
exactly.
So, how has the wheelchair and your injury affected that as well? I mean, have you noticed it's more difficult being in a
Yeah,
wheelchair, or
no, it absolutely is. Yeah, I mean, I feel like in general the gay community is very looks based, but also kind of in a way transactional.
Mhm.
Very more, what can you do for me, or that type of world. So it's complicated. The chair complicates things because certain people are very looks focused, and being in LA, that's a huge thing because it's Los Angeles. I feel like everyone is has that perfect body image or whatever it may be. So you just have to find someone who doesn't care about your physical situation, and more complicated than obviously being an able body looking for what you're looking for. But I understand my situation, and you just got to hope to seek someone um who sees you for who you are, and doesn't write you off just because of the way you look. But
totally?
you know everyone's different, so
Well, do you have any like tricks of the trade for people who are potentially in a wheelchair looking to date, or any advice that you would give, or is it more so just be confident in who you are and your situation?
yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have any, hard, tips in that aspect. But I think the biggest thing is, you know, you don't know, first and foremost, you don't know what someone's looking for on the cusp of it. So don't be afraid to be denied. But at the same time, I think the big thing is just be confident in who you are. Like,
Yeah,
yes, you're in a wheelchair. Yes, you know, you can be written off just because of the way you look, which is unfortunate. But if that's, if someone's going to write you off, then it's clearly not the right person for you.
right.
So, I think it's just be confident in who you are. It's a big thing of just being yourself. And this is unfortunately a part of who you are, being in a wheelchair. Obviously I wouldn't wish my injury upon anyone, but
Right.
that's reality. And this is my situation, so I'm confident in who I am as a person. I know I'm a good person, and hopefully you find the right person who sees that in you.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I also think it's, I always felt like I needed to have a more positive outlook on the whole dating world, of that the other person might actually like me for who I am.
100%.
And that,
a hundred
where
percent
it's like, on the flip side of that coin, you want to be confident in yourself and everything, but you also kind of got to put a little bit of confidence in others, that someone who you do meet might actually be genuine and might actually not have a problem with the chair, and might actually, care about you as a person, not as your physical appearance.
Yeah,
And
no,
so,
it's totally true, because I think at the same time for myself, I have to try to remind myself the same thing, that like, I'm more than just being someone in a wheelchair, or that like I'm worthy of finding someone. Like, okay, yeah, I don't have a six pack and look like a
me neither, by the
model.
way.
Yeah, but it's like, I don't look like the 16-year-old self that was in perfect fit condition, yada yada.
Totally.
So I try to remind myself that like I'm still worthy of being loved, or someone pursuing me or wanting me or whatever. It's just a matter of trying to put yourself in those right situations. And frankly, for me, a year into the dating world, so to speak, like I'm still figuring out the right social scenes, or whatever it may be, to put yourself in a situation where you can find someone.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. And I'm excited to see where that all goes for you. That'll be
As
that'll
am
be
I,
an.
David. As am I.
Well, shifting gears again a little bit, we've talked about your foundation a handful of different times throughout today's episode, but I know you recently had a gala. You were actually up here in Minnesota not too long ago for that. Just wanted to hear how that went, and any other sorts of elements to your foundation that you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, no, this is the foundation is great. The Jack Jablonski Foundation. We raise money for spinal cord injury research. We're not honed in on any one specific thing at all times. We're just looking to advance the research and trying to learn about what's going to help people with paralysis moving forward in life. Physically, the biggest thing from a quality of life purpose. That's something I'm very passionate and specifically looking for. The gala was great. We have a gala with the Minnesota Wild in conjunction with the Minnesota Wild game. They're a huge supporter of ours, and we're very thankful for both Craig Leopold, the owner, and Matt Maka, the president.
That's awesome.
Who's been a board member of our foundation since the inception. But no, things are great. The event went phenomenal. Went off seamlessly. We ended up raising about $385,000, which was awesome. Yeah, I appreciate it. So we're super stoked with that. This year coming up is a big year for us. I'm super excited. When it comes to the 13th year of my injury anniversary comes up in December of 2024. So just over a year away from that. And, 13 is a big number in my life. Obviously, it was the number that
Your jersey number, right?
My jersey number, exactly. And my favorite player. So hoping to have, some growth and expecting growth based on some planning stuff that we're doing as a foundation. So we're excited. This is a big year for us in terms of growth, expansion, donors, awareness specifically. So really excited, to be honest with you. And things are moving in the right direction. It seems like we're in a good place. We've got a good core within the foundation that's super passionate. And it's, again, I'm super proud of everyone that's been involved, everyone that supports us from a financial standpoint, or just from giving us their time,
right?
Volunteers, etc. Extremely thankful that we can continue to try to make a difference within the spinal cord injury world. So hopefully better things to come.
Heck yeah. Why not? Well, that's great to hear that all of that is going so well. We will make sure that we put a link to your guys' foundation in the description. So anybody watching or listening, you will be able to, jump over there and learn more if you'd like. But outside of the SCI space, I mentioned at the beginning of the episode that you're doing some, media content specializing at the LA Kings. So is there anything we could talk about as far as what you do for work and kind of I'm also interested in what is your kind of future looking like? Like, what do you hope your future looks like? Do you want to stay in the NHL working within hockey, or are you hoping to branch out and do different things down the road? Where are you kind of at with that?
Yeah, it's, good question. I mean, first and foremost, so as you mentioned in the open, media content specialist. So I went to USC and graduated with a communications major and a sports media minor. I took that after interning for the Kings for all 4 years of college and started full-time with them in December of 2020, months before the pandemic. So got in fortunately just before, but then after about 2 or 3 months of working what would be called a normal life and normal job, the pandemic hit. So I was fortunate to be a part of the Kings and stayed with them on staff all through the pandemic. It was obviously extremely tough when you're working in live sports and sports don't exist for about 8 months.
Completely.
So it was a little complicated to say the least, but
you got to come up with a lot of media to put out to keep them relevant throughout that whole time.
No, honestly, we were just making things up at that point when it comes to content. But yeah, so content for me, I run hockey content for LAKings.com. I cover the team, feature articles, things that all relate to how the Kings are doing on and off the ice as a hockey team.
Yeah.
So a lot of written content, recaps, previews, feature articles. On top of that, I do a lot of podcasting for the Kings. I help as an analyst on covering the team, recapping games, but also interviewing players, prospects, management, etc. So I help in that aspect, and then at the same time, I also do some video content for our YouTube page or our social medias and Instagram or Reels and TikToks, random stuff like that. So
Yeah.
very much centered around and focused on just creating content for our fans to know a little bit more about the Kings, or to get them up to date or in tune with the nitty gritty, or a little bit more of a hockey focused aspect on how the team is doing. So very fortunate to be a part of the Kings organization. I'm very thankful to have the opportunity. And at the same time, after the injury, I was never one to move away from the sport. It's always been a huge part of my life. Obviously,
Yeah.
from Minnesota, it's ingrained in our blood. Um,
It is kind of a thing up here,
yeah, right. Who knew? But for me, it was something that I've always had in my life, and I didn't, just because of the injury, I didn't see myself moving away from that. I love the sport. I didn't blame the sport. It's a contact sport. We all know the risks we put our bodies and
Hmm.
lives in when we play. You just never think it's going to be you, and
Totally.
unfortunately, it was. But again, it's part of the game. And I love the sport and couldn't see myself without it. So being able to still be a part of it has been a great blessing. When it comes to the future, I have a fascination in trying to get into hockey operations, which would be in the general manager category of making or being a part of the decision making that leads to a team's success on the ice
Yeah.
when it comes to players and all that type of stuff. So that's one avenue. But at the same time, just trying to continue working on my, the public speaking and the content creation and video platform and growth from a brand perspective when it comes to hockey. So don't really know where I'm going.
Yeah.
I know we should probably all have a 1, 3, 5 year plan, but kind of just in the phase of figuring it out. I love what I do, but
I feel like the whole 1-3-5 thing was like a high school, it was practice to figure all that out.
exactly
It's really tough in reality to have any sort of
100%. Yeah.
understanding, especially post COVID. You have no idea what is going to happen in 6 months. It's like
Yeah.
the entire world could shut back down, and I don't know what I'm going to be. So
100%. So yeah, I have no idea what the future holds, but I love what I do. I love who I work with. I'm grateful for the organization that I work in and their understanding of my commitment and situation when it comes to needing to go to physical therapy during work time and then so on and so forth. So I'm happy with where I'm at. I love where I live. I love the people I'm around, and things are good. I'm happy with life. Yeah.
awesome. Well, that's fantastic to hear. I mean, they're truly lucky to have you. I'm sure, and all the work you're doing is also, as I would see it, very directive towards that end goal that you did mention of, kind of being in that general management area. And, it's important to be able to communicate yourself, very succinctly and correctly. And so I think you're on the right path. We're excited for you. I don't actually have any other questions. So I do want to open up the floor if you had anything else you wanted to talk about. Otherwise, we can wrap up. So I'll leave it up to you.
Yeah, no, I think the two things. I think the first thing would be just a huge thanks to you, David, and the team that you guys have behind you, and very grateful for the opportunity to talk on this platform. But also just a big thanks to everyone listening who's supported me from the very beginning or sometime along the journey whenever they hopped on the bandwagon, so to speak. But very lucky to have the support and the ability to continue to try to raise money, continue to have a voice within the spinal cord injury world, and trying to make a difference in that aspect. And anyone who's interested in donating or just learning more about what we're doing as a foundation can visit jablonskifoundation.org. for more there. So check it out. If you have any questions, reach out to our foundation, and hopefully we can continue to make a difference in the world.
Heck yeah. I love it. I love it. Well, everybody at home, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button, bell icon. That way you know when new episodes drop. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, you could always give us a follow. But other than that, Jack, on behalf of everybody here at Spinal Cast and MCPF, thank you again for joining us. And hopefully we'll stay in contact and we'll talk again soon.
Yeah, thanks, David.
All right. Thanks, Jack.